I'm so excited to be here to introduce you to the winners of the first hackathon 2 years ago. I suspect that everybody has a reason for being here today, and I suspect that those reasons are probably as diverse as your experiences and talents that you bring here. There's a very good chance that you're not going to have a better experience, a greater sense of collaboration with the people you meet, as you will with the people you meet at the hackathon here. I suspect you reflected on what you can bring here to the problems surrounding overdose and have some ideas of what those problems are. And soon you and your newfound colleagues here will define what the unmet need is that you're hoping to address. And the unmet needs are deep and wide, as we've been discussing. In the room, there are heavily funded NIH-funded researchers who are deeply respected scientists who might answer the question of what an unmet need is one way, looking at all the evidence and thinking about where the gaps are, and what are the next logical steps. And the counselor in the room might reflect on her most recent client who has post-traumatic stress disorder and opioid use disorder and what their realities are. The business person or policy person in the group might think about the hundreds of billions of dollars that are lost on inadequately addressed substance use disorder in our country and say, where's the opportunity? Where's the best return on investment? And who's going to make that investment? The parents who have lost their adult child to overdose are going to give you some stark realities and gaps that need to be addressed. Each person in recovery is going to have ideas about the gaps in their past experience and their current reality and their near future that they're thinking about. I want to reflecting about what I have access to, what my reality is. I have access to naloxone in the emergency department. I work as an emergency medicine physician, and I know the power of that drug. And that's what fuels me to work on pushing naloxone and rescue tools as a public solution with Naloxbox. Through Naloxbox and related activities and the support of the COBRE for follow-on activities on stigma reduction, I've met those people in recovery. I've met the parent who lost their adult child. I've listened to all of them. And I'll tell you that it's been an interesting path. The path has included working with drama therapists and industrial designers and a physicist who loves communicating in cartoons. So you don't know where it's going to take you. But I will tell you that this is a caring community of scrappy innovators who love to collaborate. And I think many of us in our professional lives will never have a better experience than working together with tight focus on what matters. So as I invite you to reflect on why you're here and what you bring and what the unmet needs are that you'd like to address, let me introduce you to the panelists who won that inaugural, and so they can share some of their experiences and perspectives. So Tobin, would you like to start? That'd be wonderful. Yeah, I apologize.
Sure. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. Hi, my name is Tobin Shadlin. I am a strategic designer and researcher at the Center for Complexity at RISD, and I have a background in architectural design.
Hello, my name is Lee Hubbard. I use she, her pronouns. I am a registered nurse, and I'm currently the clinical manager at Open Door Health, Rhode Island's LGBTQ clinic up the street in the 02907 zip code. I came to the hackathon because of my work with Rhode Island Action Coalition, which is a nurse, getting nurses involved in leadership and activism committee, and met these lovely people, ended up on their team. And it's been a wild ride for the last couple of years.
Hi, I'm Tim. I also work at the Center for Complexity. I'm here because Tobin asked me to come. And my background is sort of an industrial designer, sort of a journalist. I used to make video games for a while. And we came together. I knew Tobin, but not all the people on our team were able to be here tonight. But most of us didn't know each other before the hackathon. And we came together because Hannah, who isn't here tonight on the when you do the thing tomorrow where people say what they're interested in working on, Hannah said a thing that was interesting, and a bunch of the rest of us were like, hey, can we talk to you? And that led to the collaboration. So I want to mention that because I want to say that I came with a bunch of people and then we all split off to go into other teams, because like you don't need a bunch of other designers. Like you'll need like one, like you only need so many technologists. You only need so many clinical people on a team. It's better to find people who are different from you and work with them.
And hi, everybody. My name is Anthony Dutra. I'm a software engineer by trade, but I am co-director of Block MMP, and very excited to get started.
I think we have one winner joining remotely, Farshid.
There's the other co-director right there in Germany. So he is up late, everybody. Yep.
Okay, welcome. We'll figure out the tech. So I think, we are prepared to have each of you provide an overview of your startup. So if you're willing to provide that overview, and then we might have a couple of question and answers to follow.
Sure. So just a quick background, Tim had sort of alluded to it, but our team was made up of, well, actually it's changed over the course, but it was a quite interdisciplinary team of designers, technologists, public health researchers, a journalist, a nurse, so a community organizer. So it was a quite diverse team. And the group that came up with the hackathon first place idea was called Mainstay Rhode Island, Mainstay RI. And the idea was that many people, when they overdose, they're sent to the emergency department and they wake up from their overdose, either in the ambulance or in the emergency department. And EDs were never really designed for that kind of care for people who are waking up from an overdose, who are going through withdrawal symptoms and everything that goes along with that. And so the idea, quite a simple idea, was to create a space or place for people to go to that are overdosing, that isn't the emergency department, that is designed specifically for the needs of people who are overdosing and all that comes with that. So that was the winning idea. I would say it's evolved since then. It was a very ambitious idea. I think there's definitely seedlings of a harm reduction center embedded in that idea. And so it's very exciting that that legislation has passed and that a lot of, I think, our research and our work since the hackathon win, since that idea is hopefully going to inform some of the harm reduction center efforts and decision-making moving forward. So there's a nice sort of collision and synergy happening. Yeah, that's a quick overview.
All right, yeah, and I guess jumping to Block MMP, we solved a pretty simple problem of the disconnect between opioid administration between clinics in Rhode Island. So basically what we did was we developed a very basic web application that uses blockchain technology to record each administration as if it was a transaction. And we are allowed to share privately that secured information, between our network of clinics that are taking part in becoming part of our software. So it's just myself and Varshith. We hired a team to sort of productionize the rest of the application to where it is today. So we can hopefully launch it in both the United States as well as out in Europe as a sort of co-project idea.
So
Yeah, is he there?
So next we're waiting to hear from Brian Bishop, who's on screen with We Care, the Where We Care.
Yeah, Varshith first.
Work on solution to the blockchain-based platform to track and record methadone dosage histories for methadone clinics in Rhode Island. And this was based on our conversations with the community that we had at the hackathon, and primarily with Dr. Heidi Peterson, who was one of the prescribers, and discovered this problem where there were a lot of logistical limitations in terms of tracking methadone dosages and then risk of patients not being able to get the right dosages after these clinics were closed. So we looked at different centralized platforms like PDMP, and we saw that there wasn't a lot of oversight in who was actually accessing these records, and there was also a lot of stigma being created due to law enforcement being able to like go in and look at these records. So Block MMP, we came up with a prototype, as Anthony mentioned, at the hackathon, and based on that, we were able to kind of secure a second spot in the hackathon, and then we continued to develop our MVP and prototype, and then we eventually got in contact with one of the clinics, Victor, and also we have been in touch with one of the prescribers, Seth Clark. And so right now we are in the process of actually deploying the solution and kind of getting our initial metrics for the MVP.
That sounds like some remarkable progress. I think we're going to try to tune in Brian Bishop next if he can be patched in. He's from.
Hey, I'm Brian Bishop. Just an introduction to myself. I'm a pharmacist by trade and have some data science and computer science background. So the app that we created last year is called We Can, and essentially tries to address a new medium for people to interact with, to learn about substance use disorder as a whole, not just necessarily about opioids. And the app kind of functions with three things, mainly education. An educator is someone who I think I am at heart. And we talk about ending the stigma, the type of substances there are, again, not just opioids, how to prevent a breathing emergency, and probably the most important education point is how to use naloxone, the antidote for an opioid overdose. We include some quizzes and some games throughout the application, and also attach resources. One of the ones that we worked quite hard on was actually where to find naloxone. So it's very specifically geared towards the state of Rhode Island, has locations, addresses, phone numbers for where you can find naloxone within the state, but then also just connecting people to resources they might not know about. So, working with the Department of Health to gather a list of those resources and have them in a different platform, not necessarily on the internet, not in writing on a piece of paper, on a mobile application, and kind of meet people, where we spend most of our time. So that is, in a nutshell, what We Can is, and we're continuing to develop it. We're still in discussions about, moving it and expanding it to, say, a state like Massachusetts or New Jersey is where I'm at right now. So we're working on still developing it, and we're all in collaboration still and talking.
That's terrific. Thanks. So I just find it so encouraging to hear that there are hack groups that have had so much forward progress beyond the hackathon. I just wonder if, as you think back to when you first participated, if each of the teams could maybe share were the things that they might have liked to have done differently the first time around, other team members that could have fleshed out the team, advice to the people who are attending now to get the maximum bang out of their experience here.
Thank you so much. That's a great question. I think that Tim began answering that question for our team, which was, you may have come as a pack, but disperse, find new friends, and make sure that you've got a variety of perspectives on your team. I think the other thing that was really great about our team was we took every opportunity to ask questions of the subject matter experts that were kind of walking around and offering their expertise, people like Gordon. And then, the other thing that I think is really important when you start doing this is to come in kind of as an open vessel. You may have an idea that you want to work on, but be willing to kind of shift and be nimble and be flexible if you hear something else that really sparks a new idea, or that seems to be something that maybe you hadn't thought of, but that you can really contribute to. I think those are all things that that are really important. I think the other thing that we did, and we can maybe get into this as the panel moves forward, is our idea, while it seemed really simple, huge, huge, daunting. Let's just build a new place with all sorts of protocols and all sorts of technology where people can, it is a huge idea. And it's interesting hearing about the other teams that had a very laser focused idea. Two different ways to approach a very massive problem. So just kind of know what you're getting into, I would say, and also be aware of kind of the amount of time that you're willing to commit once the weekend is over. We spend every day together, not really. Every week though, we spend time in the evenings every week, kind of furthering this discussion, working on an IRB project, meeting with key stakeholders, volunteering. And so it's passionate, it gives me energy. But the weekend is the beginning, not the end of this time together.
I think just building off a lot of what you said, it really comes down to listening and paying attention to what the process flow is and where can you add value to that process. We're not all technical, we don't need to be, right? And the app is not necessarily the answer to every problem. So how can you work within the rest of your teammates in order to create something in a time frame that's actually feasible and will show up to last through time? Because I think we're all still kind of learning even after the hackathon what exactly our purpose is with what we've built.
That's terrific. Did Varshith want to add something remotely? And then we'll hear from Brian. Okay. Brian, if you can hear us, or Varshith is going first.
Sure, I kind of concur that, so I kind of concur with what Anthony said. And I think it's really important to kind of be involved with the community and try to understand what the problems are. So can you hear me?
Yes, yeah, thank you. Yeah, sorry, we're glitchy, but not bad. So then if we could hear from Brian also, his perspectives on things that he would have liked to have done, be able to do over.
I think my words of wisdom, really, we're all here for a reason, and it's a relatively altruistic reason to be here. We all have our own stories, so really just get out and talk to not just your teammates. Spend a good amount of time today really getting to know them before you even dive into all of your ideas. This is a team that you'll be working with all weekend. And hopefully, as the other teams had said, that it really doesn't end here. So make sure you get to know your teammates. And then, lastly, is don't think of this grandiose idea. There's so many avenues to tackle these problems, either be increasing buprenorphine access, needle exchange programs, creating an app for education. There's so many different levers that we can pull. And if we start to think of this as a big problem, it gets very difficult, I think, to really come down with a concrete idea that most importantly is doable. So whatever you end up doing this weekend, make sure that it's kind of in the scope of bringing it somewhere. This is, an idea kind of hackathon, but at the end of the day, we do want to actually progress the needle to help alleviate all the pain and suffering that has happened during this opioid crisis.
That's really great. I think I'm just curious if the groups have perspectives to share on how do you know that the idea is not out there? It seems like, I don't know if you have many people have this experience, like, oh, I got a great idea, and then there's like 15 solutions out there. So how do you know either that you're onto something good, or that it somehow has some unique characteristic, or that it's set up to succeed where others have failed, that it has some value added?
You don't. No, seriously, you don't. And that's okay, because this is like a 2-day thing, right? And you're gonna, whatever you do, there'll be opportunities to keep vetting it. And I think you cannot research your way to a decision, and there's gonna be a temptation. Like, look, there's an enormous amount of literature, whatever you're interested in thinking about, there's an enormous amount of literature about it. There's tons of other people who've thought about it, right? So if you waste all of your hackathon time like trying to get caught up on your reading, then you are not going to get to a design. And so my advice to you would be make preliminary decisions early, and then vet them with the subject matter experts and the hackathon mentors who are here, and be ready to throw them out and make new decisions, and to really manage your time with a cycle of brainstorming. This is what we've got so far. Hey, this is what we have so far. What do you think? Oh, that's an incredible amount of new information that is changing our thinking. Great. Well, we're going to go away and then do that, as many cycles of that as you possibly can. That is the way that you'll get to something ultimately, right? You've already heard it from the presentations. Like, most of the solutions, like, we know what to do, right? In broad strokes, we know what to do. You know, like, there's tons of evidence-based things about how harm reduction works and how it should be done and all these, right? So, and yet we're not doing them, right? And so it ends up coming down to the sort of state-specific, site-specific, context-specific reasons why that thing isn't being done. And so it's by connecting to the people here who can tell you about those details that you can do something that is meaningful to a real sort of local, real need, right? Like, Gordon's buttons are amazing for where they are, for the context. Like, they can't, like, the buttons couldn't even survive like moving to a different room in the same building, and they needed to design it differently for that new context. And that's going to be true in many places. So your job here is to come up with ideas and then we'll throw them against, yeah, and then see if you can come up with something that will really land for the context that you're in.
I love those perspectives. Thanks for sharing, Tim.
I think, I mean, it really comes down to, so I think the question was like, how do you know you have a good idea? And I really do think it comes down to feasibility and just not over-promising in what you're building overall, right? So if you don't know about AI technology, don't say that you're trying to build something that's going to predict whether or not somebody's going to live on, you know, opioids or something like that, or measuring. Stick within the realms of what you know, but do your research. If you have an idea, I'm sure somebody else has already thought about it. And if you go just a simple Google search, I'm sure you'll find a lot, you know, just to either make yourself a little bit different or just see what they're doing and learn from them. So, you know, do your research, and like everybody's been saying, listen for sure.
Great, thank you. And I don't know if Arsh or Brian can join us remotely for additional comments on thinking about what's already out there, what a unique addition or unique opportunity might look like.
So, yeah, I think, so you can never be sure, but it's always good to have someone who has been in the community who has seen the problem at hand, right? So I think from a feasibility standpoint, as Anthony was mentioning, it's really important to have something maybe just like written on a whiteboard or on a map, and then kind of like go over it, right?
Sorry, we just lost you first. Okay. And Brian's also lost. Okay, so while we're waiting for them to reconnect, I guess I think most of you have day jobs / night jobs, and you're passionate, and passion carries us a good distance down the road. But on the 3rd month or the 11th month or the 18th month or the empty bank account, you know, at some point you need support. And so how are you sustaining now? How much do you have to map out when you bring on a full-time person or when you get a grant that can properly support you? So mainstay first. I'll ignore the laughter, okay?
What's the take home for prize 1 here? What is it?
$4.4 billion.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Perfect.
Every team has a chance for $40,000 for an investment in furthering their idea.
So if that wasn't captured on the microphone, $400 per winning team member and up to $40,000 in support for each team that wins.
Perfect.
Sorry.
That'll
Yes.
help. That will help. 2 years ago, we won $5,000. And so we decided with that funds and then some additional very generous funds from the COBRE I think that our take home for our project was $15,000. We decided to essentially do more research, do some subject matter expert interviews, to launch a website, to further kind of our online presence, and to do an IRB study that really took into account the voice of the person with lived experience and also the people who care for people with lived experience. And we probably did as much in-kind work as we did paid work as a team over the last 18 months. Obviously, a lot of our ideas got changed and shifted around due to COVID. We were going to go to Philadelphia because they were potentially opening a site. We did not do that. We were going to go to Canada. No, we didn't go to Canada. But you know, like we didn't have a ton of money. And again, the idea that we had after talking even just very briefly with subject matter experts, it was such a large idea that we decided we really did need to go back and refine further. Because you can't build a building and hire staff and develop protocols and all of that with $15,000.
No, but I think it was, again, right, like hopefully it doesn't end at the hackathon. I mean, part of it too was the idea was ambitious. I think it then launched our team into, okay, what do we need to figure out to at least move towards that very large, ambitious idea? And so that was sort of the mapping that we did and a series of, you know, all this sort of activity that's followed since. I mean, we blew through the money quite quickly, but it's been, I mean, I think all of us sort of continue to engage in the work and sort of keep our team alive and the idea alive because we're passionate about it. We think it's a good one. We think there's a lot of need around it, and we enjoy hanging out with each other and engaging with all the people that we've been able to engage with. So, you know, in addition to the idea, it's brought, I think, a bunch of other wonderful connections and relationships. I think that's super cheesy, but I mean that, I think, right, there's, yes, the funding and the money is important, and then all sort of this sort of soft stuff around it is super important too.
And while our idea has remained somewhat conceptual, we were waiting for this legislation, right? And so timing is incredible. Josh Miller is incredible. And so when something finally became possible, we had this treasure trove of information that we could then offer other groups that are doing this very powerful work. And at this point, that is voluntary. That's Wednesday evenings. But it's still absolutely worth it to get this larger idea pushed forward a little bit further.
Yeah, those collaborative relationships are so essential, and the fact that you had done so much pre-work, it aligns you up well to have a meaningful conversation with the stakeholders such as our representatives. So, Anthony, what are your thoughts about sustaining the effort, supporting the effort?
Yeah, so sustaining and supporting the effort, it's having a very good partner. So obviously thank you to Varshit for just, you know, obviously being a friend of mine and just going through this together. It's very, we're both technical guys. So us not always being in, you know, the medical scene all the time, we have to constantly learn together. And it's a lot easier when you're doing it with somebody who's also equally as passionate. So, you know, doing it with somebody, you know, is pretty good. In terms of the funding and stuff like that, we're the tech guys, so we didn't have to worry about like the coding. We, you know, money for us is obviously a thing because we want to use it as like a success measurement. And obviously you need money to run software. But really what we're more looking to see is, okay, you know, where we find more passion and support in is, okay, well, what is this system going to do for people and how can we measure that? So, you know, kind of figuring that stuff out is what's been keeping us going, and trying to see that impact at the end of the day is what's really, you know, keeping us driving. I don't know if Flush has anything to add to that.
So I think that was a great
Yeah, I think,
enunciation.
you know, like, as Anthony put it, I think it's been really good learning experience, and I think that's really important to kind of be strategic in how you want to sustain your product. right? So I think like having a partner, making sure that, like asking questions, like if you didn't understand something which is happening once you speak with your stakeholders like Victor, right? So I think it's important to have that back and forth, and having a partner always helps. And also since like having the technical background also, I guess like provided a little bit of an edge. But at the same time, I think also going back to like, right, I think it's really important to just get something out there which is like minimally viable, so that you can actually get as much feedback as possible. And I think that's the key measurement, to get feedback as quickly as possible, so that you can actually use that feedback, reiterate, and then be strategic in terms of leveraging what you have to apply for grants and funds. Think that's the way to like go in terms of like sustaining the product.
I'd like you to introduce the minimal viable product concept. I hear strongly in Anthony, the social entrepreneur driven by the passion and the impact that you're looking to have. I had the good fortune of going through an accelerator program down the street at the Social Enterprise Greenhouse. There are several accelerators like that where you can get pro bono support from people who have the business chops or who have the tech chops or know the regulatory framework, or say, you really aren't going to build that medical device, are you? So that they provide dope slaps for free as well. So, but and just mapping out, supporting your efforts, the support of the COBRE is wonderful. Grants are free, right? If you're lucky enough to land a grant, it's free money. It's not payback money or loan money. But as you try to promote your idea, there might be opportunities for small business impacts, other grants or payback type situations. So I think Brian, if he's connected, owes us 2 answers now. Just about how he knew he had a viable idea, and then how he and his team have been trying to support it and propagate it. So we'll wait for Brian to patch in here. Brian, can you hear?
Hey, sorry about that. So how do you know you had a viable idea? I think at the beginning of the day, you don't necessarily know you have a viable idea, but you decide that you're passionate enough about your idea that you're willing to make it viable. I think that's probably one of the most important thing, because if you want to make this viable long term, it's going to have to be something you devote some of your time to. Definitely, a lot of resources. If it's money, if it's capital, you have to go out and get grants, and writing grants takes a lot of time and not always necessarily the most fun thing to do. But to really understand that you think your product is good and it's something you're willing to and wanting to work on, I think is what makes you know your idea is viable.
That's great. I guess, and then do you have any other ideas about sustainability, or at a point at which you need to build a team with, people who don't have a daytime job?
So any other ideas for sustainability? I think keeping in constant communication with your team is very important. This is not necessarily everyone's full-time job, not necessarily making this a business. For our case, WeCan is a completely free application. So making sure that you like the people you're working with. Again, you all buy into a vision of what you're trying to do here. And then, keep making incremental progress. Don't let it, sit stale for too long. Always, receiving feedback, meeting with your team, iterating over things so it doesn't get stale on you, I think makes products viable.
That's great. So how many minutes do we have left, Dr. Green? Okay. Well, I hope everybody's found this informative. I've learned a lot listening to our panelists. I think they've shown great tenacity and innovation and great teamsmanship, and I'd hope the same for everybody else participating. Thanks for joining us.